Let's turn it up. That's so funny. This is so funny. All right, hi everybody. My name's Daniel Gray. I am the Trailer Park Prophet, broadcasting live from Crestone, Colorado, on Blog Talk Radio. This is Local Friday, where we take a look at some local governments around the country. And this is, of course, the day after Thanksgiving. I hope everybody's safe and had a nice celebration. I got invited out to a friend of mine's house out. Yeah, I told you I moved to Crestone, right? And Crestone, Colorado is in the San Luis Valley above Alamosa. But yesterday I got invited to a Thanksgiving fest, not fest, what do you call it? Feast, I guess you call it, out at my friend Diana's and Jim, and it was attended by 5 people, and it was just really a wonderful time. I love it out here in the San Luis Valley, and where Diana and Jim live is out in the middle of this high altitude, high mountain meadow, basically, that it is something like 100 square miles. At any rate, it was just absolutely breathtaking. The meal was wonderful. Diana's house is a alternative house. It's one of those houses that they call, what do they call it, where they have the tires? Earth house. And so it sets back into a bank, and the retaining wall in the back is tires that are filled with sand. And she built this all by herself, which was kind of interesting. You know, women generally don't go out and build themselves a house, and Diana did that. But I hadn't been there for 10 years because I've been out ramming around Colorado and South America for the last 10 years. But she built herself a really nice greenhouse, and it's got that all dialed in and everything. Now she has a daughter and has a whole life of being a parent, you know. At any rate, I don't want to bore you about that. I just wanted to tell you I had a good time, and I spent some time with some really nice people. And I'm glad Thanksgiving is over. All I have to do now is make it through Christmas, and that's the worst holiday for me. And I can be on to the new year of 2014. All right, enough about me. Let's see, where do I want to start? Oh, I want to do this story first. In fact, Diana told me about this story. I hadn't heard about it. And I went through the Gunnison Country Times, and something's wrong with the website, and I tried to look at what was going on at the Crested Butte News, and something's wrong with their website. But it doesn't matter. This particular news piece will not be in the liberal media. And if it is in the liberal media, it's going to be hidden and given just very little attention. But this, in my mind anyway, is a big story. And if you've been listening to the program, I know a lot of you have, you know that here in Colorado, 3 months ago, there was a recall of 2 Democratic state senators in Colorado who voted for gun control. Well, they won. Both of these state senators in Colorado got recalled. And the way a recall works is you say, we want this person out, and we want them replaced with this person. And so there's 2 brand new Republicans in the Colorado State Senate. Now comes the story out of Denver on the 27th about a Colorado lawmaker resigns to avoid recall. It says the 3rd Democratic Colorado State Senator facing possible recall after voting for gun control measures said Wednesday she will resign to avoid a recall election. The resignation of Senator Ivy Hudak of Denver's western suburbs came less than a week before opponents planned to turn the petitions seeking her recall. The resignation means Democrats will appoint an interim successor, guaranteeing they'll keep a 1-seat majority in the Senate next session. Oh, okay, now I get it. See, that's kind of a stinky deal. Goes on to say the two other Democratic senators were ousted from office in September. Recalls former Senate President John Morse of Colorado Springs and former Angela Giron of Pueblo. Both were replaced by Republicans. The recall efforts came after the Colorado's Democratic legislature and governor this year approved a state gun control measures, including ammunition, magazine limits, and expanded background checks. The limits were the first gun control measures adopted outside the East Coast after the December 14th Sandy Hook shootings in Connecticut that left 20 first graders and 6 women dead. So this is kind of a stinky way to do it. Rather than go through the recall, she's resigning, and then that gives the Democratic Party time to appoint a Democratic replacement, in effect nullifying the recall effort. Man, this is really a stinky way to do business. I mean, it's smart. Trust me, if I was a Republican, I would advise this candidate to resign and do the same thing so we could appoint a Republican. I mean, I understand what's going on here. I didn't even realize that that was part of the law in Colorado, that they'd be able to utilize that trick. But what this tells you is that the internal polling for this one state senator in the Democratic Party showed that this recall effort would have taken this Democratic senator down and replaced her with the Republican. I don't know, man. It's kind of interesting that that's how politics is played, but politics is a dirty business. I don't care if it's Colorado or in your neck of the woods. It's dirty. So it says here in the end, it says Coloradans proved gun rights will be trampled on without reaction, said Jonathan Lakewood, spokesman for the conservative advocacy group Compass Colorado, in a tweet shortly after Hudd's announcement. The senator didn't appear at a thank you ceremony put on by her supporters in suburban Nevada. Democrat allies bemoan the resignation. And here's the quote I wanted you to hear. Quote, "Recalls, nasty way to do politics. So sad," tweeted Democratic Linda Newell of Littleton, whose district includes Columbine High School. Nasty way to do politics. And look at the nasty way they're doing politics. They know this woman's going to get recalled, so they make her resign and appoint another. So, again, I'm from Littleton, Colorado, and I bet you Linda Newell was not born in Colorado. In fact, I bet she's not even from Littleton, Colorado. Littleton, Colorado is just this little bitty town. But what happens is all the unincorporated areas around Littleton get to say that they're from Littleton because they have a Littleton mailing address, because the unincorporated areas don't have their own post office or zip code. They just sort of cling on to whatever municipalities near them. But at any rate, that's another story for another time. So, I guess all you can do really is say, that's really good news. That's good news. I mean, that in my mind, Colorado is kind of a harbinger, I think, in a lot of ways. It's a place where a lot of people from the East Coast and left coast have moved in. The political socialists, the progressive socialists have pretty much taken over the political scene in Colorado. And other places too. I think that's pretty much the same for New Mexico, California, Arizona, although they have a Republican governor. But the West generally has had an influx of progressive socialists, carpetbaggers, and they've taken over the state politically. And so to see a Democrat, another Democrat, the third Democrat in the state Senate, for God's sakes, almost lose their seat, that's a huge turnaround. to actually be able to recall a senator in any state or representative, I mean, there's some variations, but regardless, it takes a lot of work, a lot of volunteers, because you got to go up there and knock doors and get people to sign your petition, and then you got to go through the election process. It's a lot of work, and it takes a lot of people. So the takeaway from all of this is, in Colorado at least, that there are a lot of people that are upset with the Democrats in Colorado. And I say this is probably kind of a harbinger of things to come. Not only in Colorado, but I think it's going to start happening in every state in the union. I think you're going to start to see this happen locally in your own communities. Or at least I hope you do. But I'm looking in my plastic crystal ball. It's right over here, and I can see in the future that more and more people are starting to wake up to the fact that they got to do something. They need to get involved. That this is a time-sensitive issue. There's what's going on in this country that isn't beneficial to our sustainability, and that individuals are losing more and more of their rights under progressive socialism. And I can see this in my plastic crystal ball. People having the thought run through their mind, what am I doing to save this country? What am I doing in my own neighborhood to say, hey, look, enough is enough. We're running up too much debt in all these little towns and municipalities, and the politicians are kind of arrogant and cliquish, and of course progressive socialists are bullies and they're mean-spirited. And after a while, I think people kind of get sick of it, particularly when you think about this country, and only 21% of the people in this country identify themselves as liberals, and conservatives make up, I think the last number I saw was something like 46% of people identify themselves as conservative. I got that from the Gallup poll. So at any rate, these progressive socialists, they are the minority, but they're the vocal minority, and they're very, they're bullies, you know, they're mean-spirited, and all you got to do really is hit them up with the facts. And just like an onion, a few layers, you know, they're just hollow suits, you know, they're just hollow Patagonia wearing know-nothings. But at any rate, I didn't want to digress too much. All right. Oh, here, this story. Oh, that's right. I was transitioning to my next story. Okay, I got this. You know, I like this blog. There's several blogs out there talking about conservatism, and also talking about the impending onslaught of Islam into our country. And I like this conservative infidel. And in case you don't know, an infidel is what a Muslim calls a non-believer, like you. You're an infidel there, gringo. But this is the reason I'm doing this story. It's from NPR, and I try to do stories on NPR all the time. And it says, knockout game, not racial. Black folks cannot be racial. Okay, and in case you haven't heard, tune in for the first time, this knockout game is being played all over the United States. And it entails gangs of black youths, black males, gangs of black males, marauding around big cities, and they come up behind a white person and they hit them from behind upside the head and knock them out cold in one punch. And they've killed a couple people already. And this article was written by Thomas Paine via Real Clear Politics. It says, according to the media sources, the knockout game is being widespread, overblown, and does not represent a trend. That's what they're saying on NPR. That this knockout game is not a trend. It's just an aberration. It's just an outlier, as they like to say. Although, see if this sounds like if it's being overblown. There's been cases of this knockout game crime that have spread to Philadelphia, Atlantic City, St. Louis, Birmingham, Chicago, Charlotte, Milwaukee, Denver, Minneapolis, Georgetown, New York City,
Greensboro, Baltimore, Las Vegas, Kansas City, Miami, Cleveland, Nashville, Peoria, Seattle, Saratoga Springs, Atlanta. And that is just the larger cities that are reporting. I mean, those are the ones that we know about. We report about them all the time here at the Trailer Park Prophet. And the only way we know about them is because people in different communities are sharing these stories on the internet. Otherwise, we wouldn't even know about this. That's what's so cool about the internet, is that we know things now that even our public officials don't know. And the media must know about this knockout trend, and they've decided that they're not going to report on it because they don't like the narrative. Black on white violence. And it goes on to say here, it says numerous cases have happened with lack of media attention. That does not make it any less of a hate crime. Lack of attention does not in any way make it go away or deny it is the new trend in America. NPR did a piece about whether blacks, given America's history of racism, can even commit a hate crime. Some people say black folks cannot be racist because the root of the issue is power. Quote, I would have to say with comments during attacks, we hate whites, F-U-C-K whites, I would lean that towards racial, and yes, the power comes in at having the majority win over the victim. The garbage they're trying to spin is so mind-numbing. There is never a question on racial crime. If a white on black crime occurs, now there is a nationwide trend of black on white crime, and all the media is turning a blind eye. This is absolutely absurd on so many levels. That's disgusting. It goes on to say, but I think I can say it a little better for you. Here's the double standard. And it relates to what I think is probably the most racist event happening in this country, and that is the diminished expectations of the black race. I think that is more racial than anything else. And basically this is kind of the same thing. NPR is suggesting that blacks in this country somehow have a right to commit heinous crimes, heinous violent crimes because of their past. That's what NPR is saying. And I mean, no one who's living today has known a slave, and it's probably 2 or 3 generations back until somebody knew a slave. I mean, it's ridiculous to suggest that modern white people should somehow have to be burdened by past white people's sins. And most people in America, hell, they didn't own slaves. Only a few people in the South actually had enough money or the lack of moral conviction to actually own slaves. And all of those slave owners, let's not forget, were Democrats. That's right. Check it out. If you don't believe it, they're a cupcake. The biggest racists are Democrats. And most people were against slavery. That's why we had the election of Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln was against slavery. So that election was about slavery back in the 19th century. And that's when blacks didn't have a right to vote. Women didn't have a right to work or vote back then in the 19th century. And still, the white men in this country voted in a man who was against slavery. Don't forget about that. The overwhelming majority of Americans in, 1864? No. Yeah, 1864 when they had the election, when President Lincoln ran for president. I mean, he was elected by a majority of white people. I mean, it was a close election, but that's a fact, Jack. And that's the point at which you can say that this was no longer a racist nation at the point when Abraham Lincoln got elected. I mean, if you want to talk about proof positive, if you want to talk about axiomatic, if you want to talk about word, as you people say in the younger generation, I mean, that is a fact. The fact that a majority of white men in this country in 1864 voted for Abraham Lincoln, and the reason they voted for Abraham Lincoln was that he was against slavery. At that point in time in this history, we ceased to be a racist nation for all practical purposes. I mean, certainly there was going to be some changes that need to be made down the road, and there would be a time when we'd have to outlive some of the crazy people, but we've outlived that point. And then if you wanted to reconfirm the fact of whether or not we were still not a racial nation, then all you have to do is look to Oprah Winfrey, the richest black woman on planet Earth, and the reason that she is a multi-billionaire, the reason Oprah Winfrey is a multi-billionaire is because of the fact that white people watch her show. White people buy her products. That's why she is a billionaire, because of white people. And if this was a racist nation, we wouldn't have somebody like Oprah Winfrey. Or we wouldn't have a person like Bill Crosby. Bill Crosby is a wealthy man and a celebrity because white people loved his program. A lot of rap people are rich because white people buy their damn albums. So stop calling this a racial nation. And then last but not least, if America was a racial nation, how is it that we voted in a half-black man to president in 2008 and 2012? If America was a racial nation, you could not elect a black man to president. All right? Gringo, please. Knockout game, not racial. Black folks can't be racial, according to NPR. And I talk to my black friends. I got some black friends. And when I was going to school at Western State, I talked to a lot of black people because they knew about my show, Trailer Park Profit. And I mean, I go right for the question. I mean, I get right at it. And I ask people that are black all the time, I go, well, when you're with your black friends, I mean, aren't some of your friends racist against whites? And they say, oh, yeah, sure. I mean, they make fun of white people. You know, they call their character in question. They're basically racist against white people. And I'm not saying all blacks are racist, but I'm here to tell you that if you don't imagine that a big percentage of black people are racist against white people, you're a freaking idiot. All right? I mean, listen to rap music. I mean, there's always reference to white men and they're dirty and crooked and smell funny. I mean, you listen to rap and there's all kinds of racial references to how lacking white people are. And I know this firsthand because I went to all Latino schools. I know how racism works, and I'll say it again. Latinos are the most racist people on the planet. I know how these people operate. And when I say these people, I mean the militant Latinos, the militant blacks that harbor racism in their hearts against white people. I understand these people. Not all people are like that. Not all Latinos are like that. Not all blacks are like that. But I'm here to stand tall and say that there's a substantial percentage of blacks and Latinos that are racist against white people. And yet, why can't we hear that in public? The only place I hear it in my own head and on my own program, Trailer Park Profit. It really, it's just a fascinating phenomenon of the human experience in the United States of America, I guess is kind of a way to look at it sometimes. But I really do. I have to shake my head sometimes when I hear this stuff from NPR, you know, who wants you to believe that they're involved in journalism, which, you know, in and of itself is a joke. NPR is about propaganda. All right, let's see here. I just had my story, and then all of a sudden it just boinged off. Okay, I don't want that. My computer's running kind of slow today. What did it do with my... I don't want to do that story right now. Let's see. Oh, that's kind of good. I kind of want to do that. Oh, breaking news. I'm trying to think what this has to do with... Oh, yeah, this is really something. I mean, I didn't really get it at first. And then I had to think about it. Now, this came from Greta Wire. She's one of the reporters. She does straight news for the most part. She has her own little program called On the Record with Greta Van Susteren. And the left makes fun of her all the time, but she just got promoted. She's at a better time slot now. And I like her because she doesn't want to be thought of as a political hack. So she's very cautious and tries to be very exact and try to practice the protocols of pure journalism. But this just happened about an hour ago. Breaking news, shelling of Russian, get all of this now, breaking news, shelling of a Russian embassy in Damascus, Egypt. And what's interesting, okay, now I know you guys sometimes forget, but I'm going to refresh your memory. Remember, we talked a lot about the civil war that was going on in Egypt, and there's been over now 120,000 civilians killed in Egypt. I think there's been 5 million Egyptians who had, not Egyptians, oh my God, I just screwed up. Syria. Damascus, Syria. I'm sorry, I screwed up. That's right. The Russian embassy was bombed in Damascus, Syria. And we talked about the civil war in Syria and how there's been 120,000 civilians that have been killed. There's roughly 5 million, half the population of Syria is now in exile. They've left Syria. And we talked about how Damascus or the Assad regime was being supported by Iran and Russia, and that America was supporting the rebels who we aren't really sure who they are. They're roughly a rough affiliation of 8 or so Islamic Arabic groups, mainly organized around Islam. You know, like there's Al-Qaeda that's in Syria, and we've talked a lot about whether or not the president here recently gave small armament and some light vehicles to Al-Qaeda that's fighting Assad, who's backed by Iran and Russia. But I mean, in essence, what we have here is a proxy war. It's actually a proxy war that's being funded to both sides of a civil war. So we're I guess we're basically we're in a proxy war that is a civil war, and so we're hoping that Assad is defeated, or at least that's President Obama's public policy, or at least that his foreign policy that he states publicly, that President Obama is against the Syrian regime, is against the Assad regime in Damascus. So anyway, we get this shelling of the Russian embassy in Damascus. The United States sends out a communique in regard to this event, and the United States condemns the shelling today that hit the Russian embassy compound in Damascus and expresses its concern for those killed and injured in the accident or the incident. We condemn any attack against individuals or facilities protected by international law. The United States continues to emphasize that those responsible for atrocities on all sides must be accountable. And this is just kind of interesting because all kinds of things have been getting shelled in Syria over the last 3 years of this civil war, and this is just kind of a curious response from our State Department, that we condemn the action of wiping out an embassy, but yet, and it says here, the United States continues to emphasize that those responsible for atrocities on all sides must be held accountable. But we had our embassy in Benghazi attacked, and nothing's happened. They haven't captured any of those people, and it looks to the rest of the world that this administration is just pretty much saying, hey, you can pretty much do whatever you want to any of our American facilities. But here is the U.S. coming out and saying that they want the world, the community, to go after the people that perpetrated this atrocity, saying all sides must be held accountable. It's weird on two accounts. It's weird because this essentially happened to our enemy, and B, we've done nothing about the attack on our embassy on 9/11/2012. It's just weird. I'm sorry. It's just odd. And let's see, here's a couple comments. It says the Al-Qaeda people were the only ones who had anything to gain from hitting the Russians, the ones we support. Everyone knows Syria will end up as a Islamic nightmare hellhole like Libya and Jordan and Lebanon. Then World War III will start in Turkey after Iran nukes Israel. See, this guy here, Mark Thomas, kind of thinks like I do. And I'm trying to remember. No, Turkey doesn't have nukes, but they want nukes if Iran gets nukes. Now, Mecca Reka. So who did this? The Israelis, Obama, the Saudis, Russians, even Assad, or anal cancer? No, let's put it this. No, I'm not gonna. Duh. All right, that's right. That's the only response I wanted to read. Was Mark Thomas's. It's just insanely. It's just interesting how this administration works. I mean, this deal with Syria, they're on both sides of the civil war, basically. I don't know. Weird. All right, let's do this. I don't want to listen to this whole thing. No, I don't want to do this story right now. Let me see here. That is a good story, though. We'll get to it later. Alright, let's see here. No, not this one. I'm just changing my mind today. I guess I'm in kind of a mood. Let's see. Ooh, I do kind of want to do this, though. This is kind of long. This is a 9-minute thing. And it's basically, let's do this because I think this is good radio. There's a few sections in here that I'm going to have to read to you. But, I don't want to do that right now. Hang on. God, what is wrong with me? I'm really in a weird way today. Alright, you know what? Let's do, since this is Local Friday, let's go ahead and do this Local Friday stuff. I want to get this out of the way anyway.
I went to the Gunnison Country Times, and it looks like all of it is up now. Like I said earlier, the Gunnison Country Times and I think the Crested Butte News are having a difficult time getting their newspapers online and up. Yeah, there's something wrong with it still, but there's a couple issues here I'd like to talk to you about. I think they're worthy of our time. And here again, you know, Gunnison Country Times, I think it's pretty emblematic of local newspapers everywhere. And headline, Olive Branch extended to mining company. I talk a lot about this one issue because I think it's important. This organization in Gunnison called HICA, it's called the High Country Citizens Alliance, and they get money from out-of-state concerns, and I imagine, as I've said before, they probably get money from some very nefarious organizations like George Soros, and they're fighting the reopening of this mine on Mount Emmons near Crested Butte, and they're basically continue just tying up the actual license process for this mining company to be able to mine up there. But it's going to cost the area a lot of money. In Crested Butte, in the Gunnison area, they desperately need tax dollars. But here's this out-of-state group, High Country Citizens Alliance, that isn't citizens at all, and they're trying to stop energy development by the U.S. Energy Corporation. And it says that they're extending an invitation to develop a plan that together we can all stand behind in lieu of the mining company's recently approved and then suspended voluntary cleanup program. But at any rate, you know, I just want to go ahead and make mention of this HICA organization because I know that you have organizations like this in your own community, and they need to be called out for what they are, and that is that they're carpet-bagging nefarious interests from outside the communities. I mean, that's just it. That's all they are. They're outside the community, and they're affecting public policy, and it just el stinkos, you know what I mean? And here's something that I thought was kind of interesting. This article is written by Chris Rourke. It says Western Net's marketing money on split vote. And in Gunnison here, we have a college, Western Colorado University, Western State Colorado University, I think is what they call it now. They just turned from a college to a university. And the college went to the town that the college is located in, Gunnison, and asked them for $10,000 to continue funding a new marketing campaign utilizing digital advertising media through 15-second videos and pop-up ads. The campaign targets students at Western's top 20 feeder high schools. The aim of the ads is to drive traffic from the targeted audience to Western's website. Those visits can be tallied and blah, 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 blah. But I found it kind of interesting that the college or the university is asking money from the citizens of Gunnison. It's just kind of an odd thing. Now, I know a lot of businesses in Gunnison benefit by having a college in their community, but it's kind of odd, you know, when you have one government helping another. And this happens a lot more than you probably actually ever imagined. That all these little municipalities, and you know, you take a situation like Crested Butte, you have the radio station who is funded by the newspaper, and then the newspaper and the radio station have members on their boards of directors, and then those boards of directors have members on the you know, the Gunnison county government and the Crested Butte town government, and everyone in Gunnison, and I'm sure this is exactly the same in your own community,
every one of the top heads of all the organizations in the area, there's a tight, they're connected. And granted, that's going to happen just naturally. That's human nature. But these relationships, I think, are beyond the confines of prudent behavior. Let's put it that way. I mean, there's a lot of in terms of different people scratching the same people's back, and
those people scratching the backs of the previous scratchees, and it's something I'm telling you got to watch for. And it's reminiscent of an observation I had back in the 90s, and I don't care what state it is, they have a municipal league, and they probably have, like we have here in Colorado counties. And there's Michigan counties and Alabama counties, but it's an organization that represents governments. Down at the Colorado State House in this example, you have the Colorado Municipal League, where all the cities pay in to belong to this group, and it's a lot of money too. The Colorado Municipal League has a lot of money that they get from the various cities and towns across the state of Colorado. And I just have always been uncomfortable with it because it's an organization of cities, an organization of counties that go down to the state house and try and represent all the counties and all the municipalities. It's almost, it's almost, I guess I kind of have the same feeling that a lot of people have about corporations being considered a person. I got in an argument with a person yesterday, and he was beside himself that because of Citizens United, that corporations are considered in the eyes of the law as an individual. That just made him crazy. But this is the same kind of thing. I mean, the Colorado Municipal League or the Colorado counties, I mean, they're down at the Capitol in Colorado and other capitals all across the United States, lobbying on behalf of cities or lobbying on behalf of counties. I mean, it's similar to the same argument that makes liberals so crazy about corporations being individuals. And I bring it up because I know a lot of people don't know that goes on, and I'm here to tell you that it does. Looks like there's some vandalism at the high school up in Gunnison. A couple people died. Let's see. Another example here. I didn't read this article, but it's interesting and probably something that everyone in your community should be watching for. And that is where the government is either acquiring new land or trading land. And that's what this is here. A newly proposed land exchange could put more acreage near Fossil Ridge into the hands of the U.S. Forest Service. Approximately 113-acre parcel in question, formerly owned by Butch and Judy Clark, is left over from another recent land exchange which is close to being finalized. The property was originally purchased by the Clarks in 1971. Blah, 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 blah. But these kind of things, they have these land trusts and other sort of vehicles to buy up land for open space and whatever. But I just, it's something that you should be cognitive of in your own community. Keep an eye on these land deals because it's, it's just, you just need to be involved. Freedom's not free of responsibility, but there can be some real stinky deals going on. Gunnison does this really cute thing. A lot of people really enjoy it. It's called greenbacks up for grabs, and they create their own currency, and then it's inflated by the merchants that'll accept these greenbacks. In other words, the poor retailers have to take a percentage cut, but
people go crazy for this little program. You go and buy, I can't remember exactly how it works. If you buy like 100 greenbacks, they're actually worth 120 or 130. But it's funny, man. The community just eats this program up. They just love this program. And last year, it was funny. I was going to my Bank of the West, and it was on Saturday, and there was a line of people 5 deep wrapped around the bank. And I thought in an instant, oh my God, my bank is failing. And so I was a little worried, I wanted to find out what was going on. So I went up to a couple people and asked them, what are you doing out here standing in front of this bank, my bank? And it was this greenback program. It's just cute how people are, and I like to see things like that, because I stood there and I watched these people waiting in line for the greenbacks, and they were all in really good spirit, and they had to stand there for a long time, and they were just talking to each other, and it was cool. I liked it. Oh, here's a headline by Will Shoemaker: Groups object to BLM oil gas leasing policy. Here we go. This is probably Hickey again. Yep. No. Let's see here. In a court case with local implications, advocates for a full disclosure and names of companies behind the nomination of public lands for oil and gas leasing exhaled in relief earlier this year. The federal judge in the case ruled that the identity of nominees is in the best interest. So, I mean, a lot of times people wanted to go out there and bid on these leases and be anonymous. And here again, here's Citizens or High Country Citizens Alliance that were interfering and bringing, they bring the county to court, and it ends up costing the taxpayers money. And Hickey uses their out-of-state money, which is almost unlimited funds, to go after anyone who's in their sights, whoever their opposition is, and they tie up all these lawyers from the county and the judge's time. And, and maybe they're right on this one. I really don't see why someone wouldn't want to have their name on a list of people that are bidding for oil and gas leases. I don't really see the problem with that. But it just shows you in this little newspaper in Gunnison, we've got several major lawsuits going on, and they're all being perpetrated and funded by Hickey, the High Country Citizens Alliance, and it's all funded by outside sources, and it's costing a lot of money internally within Gunnison County to constantly fight off this out-of-state funded group called Hickey. Let's see here. I didn't have a time to go over these articles because, for whatever reason, they wouldn't post. So let me just look over this. Oh, it's opening season, or both Monarch and Crested Butte are open for skiing, and I've got some early reports from some of my friends. They say the skiing's great in Monarch and up there in Crested Butte. So plan your trips. They're two wonderful places. I know you'll enjoy it. They have a lot of good facilities, a lot of really nice people. And then I think I told you this last week about the possibility that Crested Butte Mountain might be for sale. Anyways, that's the rumor out there, and it still kind of is the rumor here, written up in here's more stuff about Hickey. And that's really what all this paper writes about. It writes about the sage grouse and Hickey. I mean, if you had to say, okay, what are the two things that the Gunnison Country Times talk about? Well, it would be about the sage grouse and Hickey. All right, I don't see much going on here. Oh, here's Chris Dickey at time for hitting the restart. Now, let's see if it's any good. Well, we'll start reading it just for fun. I like reading Chris
Chris Dickey. He's the publisher of the Gunnison Country Times, and I like reading his stuff because he's such a skippy. Dickey's a skippy. Anyways, he says, making a newspaper is kind of like playing dominoes. Not the game that your grandpa used to play, rather the one your kids do on the floor, lining up dozens or hundreds of little pieces on end and then toppling the first one over, hoping the rest will fall in thrilling succession all the way through to the end of the line. The goal is not to have an interruption in that line causing a break in the action resulting in untoppled dominoes. And for all this, a tree had to die. Last week we had a break in our string of events that darn near prevented us from reaching the finish line. One of those, of course, is putting a newspaper on the streets and online first thing Thursday morning. I dare say it may have been that's all right. I don't want to read that. So see, here he is. I mean, this is for me benign BS. I mean, who cares about the trials and tribulations of Chris Dickey in Gunnison, Colorado? But yet that's what he brings to the community every single week. Benign BS. And why should a tree have to die for BS? Okay, let's see. Saga Hamlin, yeah, I don't see much here. Oh, to my staff who gather daily at 1018 North Wisconsin, so we can scatter to every corner of the community, providing coverage to offer our deepest thanks and appreciation for all that you do. Oh, man. What a waste of trees, Chris Dickey. All right, let's see here. I don't think there's... All right, let's just blow that off. Okay, we got our local Friday stuff, and now it's time to move on. In case you don't know, you're listening to the Trailer Park Prophet. My name is Daniel Gray, live from Crestone, Colorado. On Blog Talk Radio. This is Local Friday. I'm so glad Thanksgiving's over. And I don't know, I'm just not a holiday kind of person. Okay, let's see here. Moving on. Let's see. Ooh. Oh, this is kind of interesting. Now, you know, we talk a lot about Obamacare here and how it's dismal failure. And what I viewed, if I had been a Obamacare advisor, I'm telling you, I could have gotten us out there and working. You give me $600 million, I can design a website. I mean, me not personally, but with $6 million in hand, I can get the right team of people around me to put together a website, and I think almost anybody could. But obviously the president wasn't able to do that. But if you remember back, if Obamacare was really a good thing for all of America, then the rollout of Obamacare would have been a scene of President Obama at his desk, at his laptop, with a shell of girls around him. And he would have went to the Obamacare website and signed up his family. And there would have been a video and pictures and everything. Now that would have been the intellectually honest way to promote Obamacare. The president signed up for his own insurance package. I mean, that really should have been the scene, but it was nothing like that. In fact, we found out, and I've reported on how members of the Senate and the House and all of their staffs and the White House and all of those staff people, they all have their own standalone insurance policy and or provider, healthcare provider. And they all made a special effort to exempt themselves from being in Obamacare. And so the federal government is going to give a subsidy to all of the employees of the House and Senate and White House and the congressmen and the senators and the president. They're all going to get a subsidy to pay for their now higher cost health insurance because of Obamacare. I mean, the whole thing is absurd. So here comes this Senator David Vitter. And I think Vitter is the guy who, isn't he the guy that had prostitutes? Well, at any rate, doesn't matter. He wrote a bill. And he wrote a bill that well, here, I'll let David Vitter express himself in his own words. He said, "It must be nice to be king. President Obama just issued a veto threat on my bill that would force him to live under Obamacare. Please like and share if you think the president should have to live under the law named after him." And the obvious answer is yes, the president should have to live under the same law of all the people. I mean, that's like a no-brainer, but yet that's not the case by any stretch of the imagination. And I propose to you that this is not lost on a lot of people out there in the United States. I think a lot of people really understand that this president and our political actors are the elite leadership class. And I think more and more people are finding out that's the case, and I think that's why we're having the kind of turnout and changes in political fortune in Colorado for just that kind of recognition of stuff like this. Politicians not adhering to the same laws that they enforce on others. I mean, and if I was advising President Obama, I would say, look, you have to make this look like you're a part of this Obamacare. And I know for a fact I would have suggested, sir, we got to get a visual of you signing up for Obamacare with the family. I mean, that would be the greatest tool that we would have to market this Obamacare is you and the family signing up. And what difference would it make? I mean, if they should have been able to make that happen, that scene happen. And I think maybe the president understands that he doesn't want to be in the same insurance plan as regular Americans. But President Obama will never have to worry about health care for the rest of his life. I mean, he already has $16 million in the bank, and after he gets out of the White House, he'll be able to get a job paying millions of dollars a year with either a bank or a university, or imagine that President Obama wants to move on and become the Secretary General of the United Nations. But regardless, the credibility factor of the president on video signing up for Obamacare would have been a lot. And I'm surprised he wouldn't do that. And I can only wonder if that was proposed to him, because that, to me, that's such a basic idea. And yet the president has decided and said that he would veto any measure that included the White House into Obamacare. And it's like this president doesn't care about visuals or appearances. And here, speaking of visuals and appearances, yesterday President Obama and our First Lady Michelle, they visited this group of protesters called Fast for Families. They call for immigration reform and citizenship on the National Mall to show support for immigration reform. And evidently they're doing the old Occupy Wall Street routine here. They're in plastic tents, and it shows a picture of President Obama talking, and Michelle's sitting there with her hands folded, and she's staring off into space. And granted, this is just a snapshot, but she doesn't look like she's in it too well, into the scene. And it didn't give me a whole lot of information here about who was putting on this
this, well, I mean, I know who's putting it on. Fast for Families, a call for immigration reform and citizenship. All right, they were on the National Mall yesterday. That's where the president visited them, and I'm looking right now at their Facebook page. And again, it shows the president with these Act Fast people. And President Obama said yesterday in support of this group, Fast for Families, he said, it is the commitment to change from advocates like these brave fasters that will help pressure the House to finally act. And I really see this as kind of a feeble attempt. I have a sincere feeling that the president, he's just going through the motions on this, because there's no way that they're going to be able to get any kind of a bill out of the House that the Senate will adopt. And the House has already said that they're not going to deal with the Senate immigration reform bill, which is a huge monstrosity. I think it's like 1,500 pages. All right, well, anyways, here's another picture of Michelle and Barack in this little plastic tent. And it's a different shot, and boy, Michelle really does look like she's not having a very good time. I want to read some of their stuff there. Strength. So yeah, this year for Thanksgiving, this group, we're thankful for the strength and steadfastness of our movement for reform. With no water on menu, Thanksgiving will be meager, but their will kept strong by your support. I don't see this. Remember, we used to always and serve the turkey dinner. Now that's a good visual, but I don't think President Obama went anywhere near a military base, but I might be wrong. Alright, this story. This is an interesting story. I kind of stumbled into this at the Daily Dose of Conservatism. And this guy's getting a lot of attention. Headline is Cancer Patient Who Spoke Out After Losing His Insurance Because of Obamacare Now Being Audited by the IRS. This is typical Chicago politics. This guy's name is Bill Elliott. Was a cancer patient who lost his insurance due to Obamacare and couldn't pay the expensive new premiums. He was talking about paying the Obamacare fine, going without health insurance, and, quote, letting nature take its course, end of quotes. He went on Fox News where his story was picked up by C. Steven Tucker, a health insurance broker who helped keep him in his insurance. Now suddenly Bill Elliott is being audited for 2009 with the interview only scheduled in April 2014. Assuming he lives that long, that might be a coincidence, but Tucker is being audited back to 2003. I mean, they're like totally tearing this guy apart. He said that's a rather strange coincidence. Would the IRS actually go after a cancer patient who had voted for Obama initially just for appearing on Fox and now being sharply critical of Obama and suggesting that he resign for his health care law? And here's 3 minutes. Let's listen to this guy, this Bill Elliott guy, the cancer survivor, and he's on Megyn Kelly's program. And let's take a listen here. Welcome to the Trailer Park Prophet there, Mr. What was his name again?
President Obama tried to dig his way out from under the growing controversy over millions losing their plans, despite his promise that they could keep them. Tonight we speak with a viewer who just messaged us on Facebook telling us that after his insurance, which covered most of his cancer treatments, was canceled, he doesn't know what to do. Bill Elliott joins me now. Bill, thank you very much for being here. I'm sorry about your cancer diagnosis. So you had been getting treated, and then you found out that your plan was canceled. Why do you believe it was due to Obamacare?
Thank you, Megan, for being on the show. I believe because What insurance guy told me was that it was beyond the catastrophic previous condition.
Okay, and sorry, my question for you tonight is whether, you know, the president who has now come out and offered this sort of apology, your reaction to it.
I believe that was more of a insult to me and the other people who have been canceled than him saying 41 times that, period, you keep your daughter, keep your insurance, period. To me, now he's saying, like a doctor comes into your operating room and says, look, you know, I cut out your wrong kidney, but I'm sorry about that. There's nothing you can do about it now, except get on my website, if we can ever get on the website, which I've tried 3 times, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Do you feel that the
Man, this
president
guy's wrecked, poor guy.
knowingly misled you? Does it even matter to you?
Absolutely, he misled me, because, in fact, I voted for him because of that fact. You know, you got Governor Romney coming out with his facts, but when President...
All right, this isn't very good radio. Sorry, buddy, he looks like he's really sick. His eyes are all droopy, his color's not very good, and obviously his speech is looking at the electronics here at the Trailer Park Profit Show. Let's see here. Oh, creeping Sharia law. Sharia law is the law that is implemented by Muslim leaders across the world. And here's a story I have from Alan B. West, one of my favorites here at the Trailer Park Pro Show. Again, Alan West is a past Republican congressman from Florida, and he has his own website. He's a black man, very conservative. I like him a lot. And he writes here, growing up down south, we used to play a game called Boiled Frog. The key was understanding that you do not take a frog and dump it into a pot of hot water. You place the frog into a large pot of cold water and allow it to be comfortable and flop around. Then you begin to slowly turn up the heat so the frog is unaware of the subtle change in temperature gradient and eventually boiled. And so it shall be with the infiltration of Sharia or Islamic law into the United States, thanks to website Creeping Sharia. And we've done stories from Creeping Sharia. They're really a good website. Although, you know what? It says website. I haven't seen them on Facebook. They may have been kicked off of Facebook. But at any rate, he goes on to say, thanks to the website Creeping Sharia, we have another stealthy example. It seems that in Minnesota, St. Paul to be exact, the YMCA and the St. Paul police are accommodating the burgeoning Somali Muslim community. There have been previous reports from the Minneapolis-St. Paul area regarding Muslim taxi drivers who refuse fares to individuals with dogs or carrying alcoholic beverages from the airport. I also recall an instance where a Muslim cashier worker at a Target store refused to touch pork products for scanning and bagging. Now, as written in the Star Tribune by Nicole Norfleet, the YMCA and the police have started a swim group for young Somali girls ages 5 to 17. The issue is that special considerations are being made to address modesty concerns so that the Muslim girls can swim and not reveal too much of themselves. According to the report, during the hour-long swim practice, all other swimmers are cleared out of the pool. The men's locker room is locked and female lifeguards are brought in. Quote, I think this is just a great opportunity for them to learn basic skills that we take for granted, end of quote, said Sergeant Jennifer O'Donnell, who has worked with Somali community regularly during their time
with the department. I would have thought that teaching the basic skills of liberty and freedom for all people would have been a better lesson. That's what Alan West is saying. He goes on to say, should we not instead be teaching these young girls that America is the land of equal opportunity and they need not be castigated by a second-class citizen? Why is it that America must accept this cultural norm from a Somali community and not accept ours? We have to have privacy, said Uba Ali, who is the mother of a 12-year-old Ryan Demuki. During the past summer, the little girl had to visit the pool at 5 a.m. so that she would have the privacy she needed to enjoy the water while still adhering to her family's cultural and religious beliefs. This is how it subtly begins. The emotional tug to allow the young girl the privacy to swim. Hani Hussan, who volunteers at the Al-Hishan Islamic Center in St. Paul, said she looked into reserving public pools for girls, but it was too expensive. You can only imagine the outcry from the ACLU, an atheist organization, if a Christian group were advocating for private swim time. I thought our country struck down the concept of separate but equal. And that is a brilliant point that Alan West made here. We struck down separate but equal, the old Jim Crow laws of the South. And this is a stunning revelation in that this is creeping Sharia law. This is exactly what Noam Chomsky and Sal Alinsky talked about, that the revolution has to happen incrementally over time. And here's a perfect example of radical Islam employing the techniques of Sal Alinsky, making change incrementally. Because once you've established that young Muslim girls have a right to public accommodations away from the prying eyes of males, then you've created sort of case law. You've created a precedent. And I wholly think it's out of line. And unquestionably, it would be fought by the ACLU and the mainstream media if it was a Christian group who proposed to do the same thing. In fact, I bet you could probably find some of the Amish out there that probably have the same kind of a feeling about their little girls being dressed modestly and shouldn't be half naked in front of men. I mean, they would be able to have the same kind of standing in pools, no pun intended, that these little Muslim girls have. But I bet the ACLU wouldn't come to the defense of the Christian group. All right, moving on. Oh, let's see. And he goes on to say, why should Somalis come to America if they wanted to maintain their discriminatory cultural and religious beliefs? And where is Sander Fluke to decry this as a war on women? Where's the now game? I know the unusual detractors will call me and others Islamophobic, but no label will deter our efforts to tell the truth. And this isn't happening in Minnesota. Creeping Sharia has examples of other Sharia-compliant swim classes. It's creeping along in Nashville, Kansas City, San Diego, and even Harvard and MIT and George Washington University. We've talked about a lot of these cases. Not sure about the temperature of the swimming pool, but it keeps feeling warmer and warmer in my pot. I don't understand that reference by Alan West, but maybe you do. And it's stuff like this that really alarms me in a lot of ways, because they're using these little girls as an effort to incrementally implement Sharia law. Because on the backs of these little girls, they'll be able to suggest other Sharia law type of changes in society and the use of public facilities, and this is just the building blocks of creeping Sharia law, and I think it's illustrated here quite accurately. And okay, we already did that story. All right, this is kind of silly, but I'm going to do this. Probably against better judgment. But I heard this one time. I think I was listening to YouTube, or maybe I was listening to someone like Murray Povich or something like that. But this one sort of radicalized black woman, for lack of a better term, was going on about how she didn't like white people. And I know who it was. Speaking of black on white violence, the new Black Panther Party. That's who I was listening to, and this lady was talking about how more crackers need to die and whatnot, but she said that white people aren't even white, they're pink. And that really caught me off guard, so I started looking at my hands and my feet and my chest and everything, and I realized, oh my God, this woman's right. White people are pink. Although actually we're kind of half white, half pink. But we are pink. I mean, we got some pink in us. I mean, you can see it. And so today I was just being a little funny, and I said, black people are not black, they're brown, and white people are not white, they're pink. I don't know, I thought I was being clever. But one of my Facebook it's amazing the things that people find interesting. Now, I was just trying to have some fun. I was actually getting ready for the show, and I knew I was going to be talking about a lot of serious stuff, so that's why I came up with that that whole line. Uh-oh, this isn't... Okay, so my friend Robin Clark says, laugh out loud, I'm not pink. And I said, yes, you are, Robin, pink as the panther. I thought that was a good response. And she laughed out loud again, and I said pink power. And then my black friend, Cortland D. Willie, says black, white, or otherwise, people are people. I agree, Cortland. I should give him a little like. That's good. I like Cortland. He's one of my black friends, although he's one of my liberal black friends. And then Robin Clark says white people are different shades, but we don't dwell on our color tones like that. White is white to us, and black and to black people. We consider Hispanics to not be white, while black people consider anyone not black to be white. The government gives Hispanics their own box. I gotta tell you, a lot of times when I'm filling out a form, I'll put down Hispanic, because I'm hoping maybe it'll give me some special favor. Because and I'm not really lying, because I don't know my dad or mom or none of my family, so maybe I am Hispanic or something else. American Indian. I want to be American Indian. I probably look more American Indian than I look Hispanic. And then Robin Clark goes on to say, Hispanics don't consider themselves white or non-white. They set themselves apart from both black and white. Exactly. And she goes on to say, just saying, I may not be pink, but some whites may be. Don't dwell. And obviously she's kind of dwelling on that. She's probably doing exactly what I did when I was listening to that new Black Panther movement lady. You white people are pink, man. That Robin Clark was probably looking herself like I did, like, oh wow, I guess I am pink. I think we already did that story. All right, this is a real serious story, and I probably should have started with it. This story kind of scares me a little bit. This story has to do with the pending disaster in the Middle East, where Iran gets a nuclear bomb and unleashes it on Israel. And I got this story from Your Daily Dose of Conservatism. The headline here,
from yesterday is Netanyahu, he's the Prime Minister of Israel, vows to banish darkness of Iran nuclear program. Now, up to this point, he's taken a very stern, firm stance against what was going on in the deliberations in Geneva that we talked about between the P5+1 and the most recent agreement that came out, with the 3 stages. All right, at any rate, this comes from Via Jihad Watch, which is kind of interesting. It goes on to say, a light into the nations indeed. Netanyahu vows to banish darkness of Iran's nuclear program. That was written by a guy named Joshua Davovich for the Times of Israel yesterday. Melding the Hanukkah holiday in foreign affairs, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu solemnly vowed to act as a light unto the nations. That was the quote. And act against Iran's nuclear program should diplomacy fail Thursday night. Speaking at the Western Wall for a Hanukkah candle lighting ceremony, Netanyahu compared Iran's nuclear program to a darkness that would be forced out by Israel, referencing a popular children's song for the holiday. So this speech was very much meant for his internal audience as well as external, like you and me. And this is a quote. He went on to say, he said, "We came to drive out the darkness, and the largest darkness that threatens the world today is a nuclear Iran. We are bound to do all we can to prevent this darkness. If possible, we will do this diplomatically. If not, we will act as a light unto the nations." End of quote. Jerusalem has denounced the deal signed Sunday between Iran and the 6 world powers that erases sanctions in return for limits on uranium enrichment and more intrusive inspections regime. Earlier Thursday, let's see, what's his name? Alkavo Adamor, the former head of the Israeli National Security Council, took the pages of the New York Times to rail against the nuclear deal between the world powers and Iran, calling the accord a diplomatic failure that missed the mark in diverting to Iran's nuclear weapons program. The agreement represents a failure, not a triumph of democracy or diplomacy. Netanyahu has castigated at home and abroad for taking a harsh stand against the U.S. and European concerns for signing the deal, his critics claiming he is deepening Israel's isolation while strengthening the Iranian regime. But he went on to say that he is not, meaning Benjamin Netanyahu, is not given to delusions that Iran would pull back its nuclear program, comparing the nuclear deal to a failed diplomatic initiative meant to stymie North Korea's nuclear program. Quote, this is Netanyahu again, he says, "I believe in speaking the truth and standing for important principles in order to ensure peace in the world and our security, and of course our peace," he said, "will continue to act in this spirit." But this tone that he took here yesterday was different in a way. He had kind of a religious flavor to it, and it has a more profound observation of the situation that he's under. I mean, he's talking about banishing darkness. I mean, that's getting down to the base root of politics. I mean, that's basically saying either you're with us or you're against us. And if you're with us, you're against darkness. And if you're against us, you're for darkness. And so these are tones that Netanyahu hasn't used before, and I think it represents his sincerity in this situation, and that this is becoming more and more serious. As each day passes, the issue becomes more serious for Israel and the world.
Okay, let's see here. Moving on. I think we did this story. Yeah, we did this story. Obama claims he's among the most accomplished presidents ever. We talked about it on Friday. My friend Justice says of that comment, he says, Obama is right. He is the golden child of the too big to fail. He certainly was the more effective of the two evils. There is no possible way that McCain or Romney could have gotten away with so much in such a short time. All right, now here again. This comes from Breitbart. Headline reads, UN declaration, or rather, UN declares 2014 as the year of solidarity with the Palestinians. And remember, most of the members of the UN are of dictators and kings, and the majority of countries, I would suggest, are pro-Islamic. I would have to say that's the majority, just taking a guess, or it's close to being the majority, but at any rate, New York, November 28th, the 68th General Assembly has adopted a resolution declaring 2014 as the International Year of Solidarity with the Palestinian people. Co-sponsored by more than 30 countries, the resolution received 110 votes in favor, 7 against, and 57 abstained earlier in the day as the Assembly wrapped up discussions on the Palestinian question, which began on Monday. I didn't even know they were taking it up. All right, now here's Australia, Canada, Federated States of Micronesia, Israel, Marshall Islands, Palau, and the United States voted no. The resolution called for efforts to promote the realization of inalienable rights for Palestinians, including the right to self-determination, support the Middle East peace process for the achievement of a two-state solution, and the just resolution of all final status issues, and to monitorize or mobilize international support for and assistance. The resolution affirmed the General Assembly's support for the Middle East peace process on the basis of relevant UN resolutions. The terms of reference of, okay, blah, 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 blah. The initiative, it's here, the Arab Peace Initiative adopted by the Council of the League of Arab States and a permanent two-state solution of Israel. And it doesn't give us the list of countries, but the 100 countries, and I can't remember how many countries there are. I think it's 220, but I can't remember. It's around 200. At any rate, 100, for sure, the 110 votes in favor, the majority of that 110 votes, they voted in favor of this resolution for International Year of Solidarity with the Palestinian people. I can guarantee you the majority of that 110 votes were people who are a part of countries that are dominated and ruled by radical Islam. And if you don't think that's right, give me a call. You can always give the Trailer Park Prophet a call at 646-716-8506. And before I forget, I know I'm a citizen journalist, but it would be kind of nice if I could make some money. And to do so, I started a business. I haven't been promoting it, but I got to start doing that. And that is the Trailer Park Prophet Love Connection. Now, you can go on the internet, go to Trailer Park Prophet. It'll take you over to the Love Connection. And this is good for you if you're a male and you're thinking about maybe going out of the country and you'd like to meet some nice young ladies. Well, all you got to do is look for Trailer Park Prophet Love Connection on the internet. And if you know somebody who maybe needs a nudge in one direction or another, you may have a workmate or a brother, tell them about the Trailer Park Prophet Love Connection. A lot of these women are all over
the world, or these women are from all over the world, and they're really nice women, and they want to meet nice men. And if you happen to know someone in your sphere of influence that's a nice guy, doesn't have a woman, doesn't is presently not involved in a serious relationship, let them know about the Trailer Park Profit Love Connection. They're going to love you. Oh, here's a good story. Python eats passed out drunk. Excuse me. I know I shouldn't have had that popcorn. Okay, excuse me. Python eats passed out drunk guy in India. A python ate a person who was drunk and lying beside the liquor shop. No kidding. You got to see this picture. It's on my Facebook page, Daniel Gray. And it shows this python in the back of a pickup, and there's a huge bulge in this python's gut. And it does very much look like a body. In fact, it looks like a body wrapped in a snake. And this is phenomenal. Oh, yeah, I guess you could Google it. Just Google Python eats passed out drunk guy in India. And I'm telling you, this will blow your mind. All right. That's a pretty good little story there. Python eats drunk. No, we kind of did that story already. Actually, that could be the story. Oh, I did the story. I didn't want to do this story. I talked about this a little bit on Friday. And it dealt with the rules of engagement of the Obama administration and how the soldiers out in the field have to call in to return fire, and how the president only has to go through his flip card and decide on Tuesday every week who dies via a drone strike. And that the drone strikes have killed by far more civilians than they actually have terrorists. But at any rate, this is back to the rules of engagement. And I want to do this story because it gives you the numbers. And the numbers are kind of startling. Okay, listen to this. This could easily explain the disparities in deaths and injuries. Now, under Bush, compared to those of Obama, figures through September 11, 2012, in 7 years under Bush, there were 575 deaths, we're talking about Afghanistan, and less than 3,000 wounded. In less than 4 years under Obama, there have been the same amount, 700 or 575 deaths and 15,000 wounded. Under Obama, that means that 70% of all deaths and 80% of all wounded occurred under Obama's watch as of September 11, 2013. Perhaps tying our servicemen's hands behind their backs is not such a good idea after all. And this one colonel, Ken Allard, says, call me crazy, but what on earth is the point of remaining there under these rules of engagement, much less subjecting American soldiers to another set of restrictions that make sense only in proportion to your distance from the combat zone. According to the Washington Times, the battle in which a helicopter was shot down with 30 deaths, including 17 members of Team 6 Navy SEALs, is a perfect example of the folly of restrictive rules of engagement. And we talked about this battle. It was a AH-64 Apache gunship pilot said he saw the spot from where the Taliban operatives fired the rocket-propelled grenade that felled the copter. Due to rules of engagement, the tactical directives couldn't fire at the building where I thought the shooter was, so I aimed directly to the west of the building, the pilot testified. But at any rate, I mean, you look at the number of deaths under Obama compared to Bush, there's a lot more, and the reason being is that
basically the Obama administration has tied the hand on the backs of the soldiers in the field of Afghanistan, and it's costing them their lives, and tragically even more of them are being injured and maimed. I mean, I guess that's not more tragically, but regardless, that's President Obama for you. And why is he doing this to the military? And I've seen these stories now over the last 4 years that the rules of engagement in Afghanistan have been changed, and it basically makes our American soldiers more vulnerable. Why would the president do that? I can't get my mind around it. Okay, here we go. Obamacare. Here's your Obamacare update. I got this again from the conservative infidel. The only one that's reporting on this, and this is a big deal. And this is something that administrations have historically done. When they have something that they have to announce to the public, and it's not preferable to the image of the administration, then what administrations have historically done is they release it to the media on Friday, or they release it before a holiday in hopes that fewer news outlets will report on it. But it's kind of an odd thing to do, because now, and people have been for years, they wait for these Friday administrative news dumps. And of course this is a holiday news dump, but it's another Obamacare delay. And it says just one day before Thanksgiving, on the busiest day of the year, the Obama administration has announced another Obamacare delay. Small businesses will not be able to shop online for health insurance until November of 2014, after the election. At least I imagine it's after the election. Later than Health and Human Services originally announced. Now, this is from the Washington Post. They say small businesses will still have the option to purchase coverage through the new marketplace, but will not be able to do so online. Instead, until next fall, employers with fewer than 50 workers will need to work through the broker or agent to buy health care plans for their employees. Quote, "We've concluded that we can best serve small employees by continuing this offline process while we concentrate on both creating a smoothly functioning online experience in the shop marketplace and added key new features, including a employee choice option and premium services by November 2014, the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services wrote in a question and answer distributed to health law stakeholders." So I can't quite get my mind around what's going on here. Now, they're saying, on one hand, that small businesses will be able to go and purchase coverage through the new marketplace, but they won't be able to do it online. And I'm wondering if this is an admission that this Obama website is more of a mess than they've let on, or somehow they're trying to hamstring small businesses, which employ 80% of Americans. 80% of the people in America that have a job is from a small business. You need to know that. But at any rate, you got to try to read between the lines here and figure out, what's going on with Obamacare and this latest delay. And I guess that for sure we know that the website's a bigger mess than we thought it was, but there's something else going on here. And I don't know if this is a way to keep the problems that small business are having with Obamacare out of the debate of the upcoming 2014 elections, but something's going on, and we're not told the whole truth. But one thing we do know, that this signals that, so this is basically saying,
I guess this is the best way to look at it, that the website is not ready to handle the vast majority of the requests for insurance, because the vast majority of people that will go on the Obamacare website are people that are employed by small business.
and they're the most populous group of our society is people who work for small business, and they're not going to be able to go through the exchanges, at least online. All right. Here's another one of these knockout. And here's another. God, there's like 5 knockout videos out there. This comes from the Blaze. Fort Myers, Florida teen was arrested this week for attacking
Senior citizens. I mean, can you imagine knocking out some old person? Some old white person? Alright, let me see if I can get this a little bit. Uh-oh, I may have lost contact with the web. Okay, then again, this comes from the Blaze, talking about whamming teens random target beat up senior citizens. This Fort Myers, Florida teen was arrested this week for attacking senior citizens. Travessa Blanks is charged with 2 counts of battery in the seemingly random and senseless attacks, according to WBBH-TV, and they actually have video here. One 72-year-old victim told the news station he was weeding his garden. Tuesday, when he was kicked from behind, the victim fell to the ground and said he saw a woman walking away laughing, joined by a group of people. I was in shock. Who would expect anything from out of the blue to happen like that? There's no reason had I done something or said something. That's what the victim told the television station. I didn't hear anything. There was nobody in the area at all. When all of a sudden I felt a blow to my hip and I was on the ground. I turned around to see what happened, and there was a girl standing there laughing. He said that the same day another man was attacked. Harry Holvich told the WBBH his doorbell rang Tuesday and he answered seeing well-dressed teens outside. I stepped out to see what she was pointing to, and there was another girl standing there, and wham! The 89-year-old man. Again, the group laughed and fell and fled. Authorities identified the 15-year-old involved with footage taken of the attacks. Blanks, then apprehended, admitted to beating the men. She is now spending 21 days in detention facility before her court date on December 19. The random acts of violence seem to follow what appears the growing disturbing trend known as the knockout game, which involves targeting someone and trying to knock them out in one swing. So at least one television station, this WBBH, is on this story. I mean, this is a really bad story. And again, it's black on white violence. I can't do that. I was just kidding around. One thing that makes progressive socialists really pissed off is when you remind them that President Obama is half white. And so I put up a nice picture of President Obama smiling with his nose up in the air. And I wrote the headline says, Barack Hussein Obama, America's first half white, half black president. And my friends kind of went off on it a little bit. But here's a story I was reading from the Examiner. Now, this really kind of cracked me up. You know, there's so many people out there that are so creative, and God knows if this stuff is true, but I still like to report on it and let you decide. But this came from the Examiner.com. And basically what this is saying is that President Obama had a no job. And you can go to my page and read this. It says, is this why Obama refuses to release his medical records? Because Obama's never released his medical records. Even though Romney released his and John McCain released theirs, Obama did not release his. And this article suggests that the reason might be that President Obama at some point in time in 2007 or before, when he first ran for the Illinois State Senate, actually got a nose job to make himself more appealing to white people. That's basically what this article is referring to. And the reason why President Obama may not want his medical records released, but this guy, Dr. David L. Schreiner, actually wrote a 276-word letter, claimed that he had a cholesterol level. No, that's the doctor for Obama. He did write a letter about Obama's health and said, let's see. But the later on in this article, Dr. got to describe
he sees in before and after pictures of Obama, and he goes these very doctor-like explanations of the nose and exactly what looks like happened to President Barack Obama's nose. It's just kind of interesting. And I wish I could get some of this language to you. Okay. Filmmaker Joel Gilbert contends President Obama has altered his facial profile for the national stage and American politics, citing two nationally known cosmetic surgery experts he consulted who concluded Obama had a nose job. Quote, it appears Obama had some aesthetic refinement, said plastic surgeon J. David Holcomb. And I love this. I love this plastic surgeon talk. Listen to this. He says, the upper and middle nasal vault are both narrowed. Upper and middle nasal vault are both narrowed. The tip and infra-tip are softer, and the tip has been rotated up, he said. Alar height appears to have been reduced, whatever alar height is. Anyways, it appears to have been reduced so that the lower part of the nose that makes up the nostrils appears softer. These changes are not characteristic of the natural aging process, says Holgram, he's a plastic surgeon, where the tip tends to settle and rotate downward, causing the appearance of a longer nose, and where the tip also often widens noticeably. And this other woman, she's also a cosmetic surgeon. She says in the three younger photographs, Obama appears to have a bulbous nasal tip with wide alar bases, not uncommon with males and with skin of color, Lewis said. The more current photos show a thinner nasal tip, which suggests some finessing of his nose over the years, but it is a very natural looking effect. But, I mean, here's where it gets kind of interesting now. And in case you don't know, President Obama spent his formative years in Hawaii. And he lived with his maternal white grandparents. But one of the people that spent a lot of time with young Barack Obama, or Barry Soetoro, whatever you want to call him, was a guy who's very famous named Frank Marshall Davis. Now, Frank Marshall Davis is from the Chicago area, and he was a professor, but he is a renowned communist, socialist, and radical. Well, Marshall Davis, after he retired from teaching, I think he taught at Chicago University, went to finish out his remaining years in Florida, and one of the reasons that some have suggested that Frank Marshall Davis went to Hawaii was to mentor young Barack Obama. And there's other people out there on the internet that have done these side-by-side comparisons of Frank Marshall Davis and Barack Hussein Obama Sr., and they show that it's more likely, or they're suggesting it's more likely, that Frank Marshall Davis was actually the father of Barack Obama and not Hassan or Barack Hussein Obama Sr. And when you see the comparisons, you've got to say, my God, Barack Obama looks a lot more like Frank Marshall Davis than he does look like Barack Hussein Obama the first. And this guy goes on to say, he goes, well, then why did Obama get a nose job? Gilbert contends that this was done in an effort to hide the connection to the avowed communist, a man who many believe is Obama's actual father. Gilbert told Corsi he believes Obama had plastic surgery because he was concerned he was looking too much like Frank Marshall Davis as he got older. In Barack's books, Dreams from My Father, and the other one, I'm trying to think of the name of it, I can't think of it right now. He refers to this guy in his book, I can't remember now what name he uses, but he refers to this guy in his book as someone who mentored him through his childhood in Hawaii, and a lot of people think that who he's referring to is Frank Marshall Davis, and he came up with another name for Frank Marshall Davis because he didn't want people in the future making the connection that Frank Marshall Davis had to Barack Obama and a big influence on Barack Obama and his ideology. But it goes on here to say, Gilbert, he says, I don't think it was a coincidence that Obama chose to undergo rhinoplasty before running for the U.S. Senate and facing the national spotlight. If Obama was identified as Davis's son, it would connect the Marxist dot of the Obama entire life journey, Gilbert added. In this reporter's non-medical opinion, it seems that President Obama's skin tone has also actually become lighter over the past several years, given the fact that Obama is an avid golfer and does many outdoor campaign events. Lack of sunshine would not seem to account for his lighter tone. However, and again, this is only speculation, while we know that he has certainly not sequestered himself into his office for the last 8 years, he could have engaged in a now popular practice of skin bleaching. So, creative mind come up with creative stories, and they may be fiction, I don't know, but they come from pretty good sources, and if for no other reason, I like reporting on them. They're kind of interesting. Let's see. I mean, this isn't a big story, but it was kind of interesting. I saw this. This actually came from the Examiner.com too. And it's that President Obama's youngest daughter, Sasha, that is not her real name. Sasha, she's the younger Obama daughter. Her real name is Natasha, not Sasha. President Obama's youngest daughter is Natasha. And this story on the nightly news with Brian Williams. And it's just kind of interesting. I don't know. No big deal. It's just kind of fun, to report on the first family sometimes. Because we see so little of them. Alright, what do we got? 8 minutes left. I'm going to do this story. This is kind of interesting. I've mentioned this before. There are some very things between the Obama administration and the lamestream media, and this is kind of interesting because it really does lay this out. And the headline here is News Organization Ties to the White House. Now, ABC, their senior correspondent is a lady named Claire Shipman. Senior correspondent Claire Shipman, and she married to the White House press secretary, Jay Carney. And it says here that calls him the official ass carrier. But they're married. and she's a senior correspondent. Now, I'm not saying that there's something going on here, but I think you'd have to be foolish not to think that there is. CNN President Virginia Morrissey. She's married to Hillary Clinton's Deputy Secretary Tom Nides, Nides. Cozy relationship. CBS President David Rhodes. His brother is the top Obama official, Ben Rhodes, and has been charged for, not charged, but they say charged, but it wasn't charged, but a lot of people have suggested that Ben Rhodes was the one that came up with the talking points for Benghazi, that the attack on the Benghazi consulate was the result of this anti-Muslim video. Well, Ben Rhodes, who works in the White House, came up with that, and his brother is the president of CBS. Now, I guess the question you have to ask yourself was, is this a conflict of interest? Is this a coincidence? Or were these individuals hired because their significant other had a high-placed job in the media? I guess that's the question that we all have to ask. And is this ethical? And the other example they give, ABC President Ben Sherwood has a sister who is a special advisor to President Obama. Her name is Elizabeth Sherwood. And it just seems like that there ought to be some law, rule, or administration in this situation who would not want to have these kinds of relationships. I mean, it doesn't look good, and in my mind is inappropriate. And I don't think really you can necessarily pass a law to prevent this kind of thing from happening. But you would think that if you were putting together an employee manual, this would be some sort of a subject that would be addressed in that manual that would say that this administration is not going to hire people that have close affiliations with those in the media, and would reserve the right to be able to look over any relationships of individuals and who they work for in the hiring process. It's just kind of interesting. Oh, and here's a website. This is kind of funny, too, where this came from. They call themselves the American White History Month. Kind of made up. That's just funny. No, I don't want to do that story.
Oh, the Obama administration is being accused of giving labor groups special treatment under the law. They're talking about the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, after formally proposing a change that could exempt union health plans from a pesky Obamacare fee. And remember that's the Cadillac tax that goes on all the really good health insurance plans. Senator John Thune, Republican from South Dakota, who flagged the obscure rule change after it was filed in the Federal Registry, see page 70, blasted the exemption as crony capitalism at its worst. I told you this was coming. Unions are now experiencing the ugly reality of the law, and they want out, he said in his statement. Indeed, the AFL-CIO has fought against what is known as the reassurance fee in the Affordable Care Act. The temporary fee would kick in next year and is meant to raise $25 billion over 3 years. Hello. To help pay for the cost of people with pre-existing conditions signing up for coverage through the Obamacare exchanges. So here's another example of someone getting an exemption from Obamacare, and it truly is crony capitalism. And it just downright is stinky. All right, everybody, time to get out of here. I can't believe it's Friday. I hope you have any kind of weekend you want. Thanks a lot for being here with the Trailer Park Puppet, Daniel Gray in Crestone, Colorado. We'll see you on Monday.